there where we was talking about the properties, bless you, properties of a kite, there is a picture of a kite there with a bunch of markings in it, okay? So we're going to go through and talk about each property, and those are going to relate to all of the markings that are in my kite. So we're going to start. It says a kite, okay, whoops. Try that one more time. A kite is a quadrilateral with the following properties. Okay? A quadrilateral with the following properties. So it has exactly two pairs, talking about wrong parts here, of consecutive, what does that mean? When things are consecutive, that means they are, well, angles, yes, in a trapezoid, but if I'm just talking about this is consecutive to this, it's like right next to each other, right? Like 1 and 2 are consecutive numbers right next to each other. So those are sides, consecutive sides, congruent sides. If you will look at your picture, what two sides are marked with one congruent slash? AB and AD. Do you see how those sides are next to each other? They touch. Those are two consecutive sides that are congruent. So we're going to fill that in. So segment AB is congruent to segment AD. Okay, those are the two. And it's usually like, most times when your kites are drawn, it's like the two shorter sides. Those are going to be congruent. And then the two longer sides that are next to each other are also congruent. What would those sides be? What are the segments with two hash marks on them? Whoops. BC and DC. Okay. So, again, AB and AD are congruent. Those are told by the one hash mark. And then BC is congruent to DC, and that's separated by 2. All 4 sides are not congruent, but the 2 sides that are next to each other are congruent. The ones are congruent, and the big ones are congruent. And then the next one, we have one pair of opposite angles that are congruent. Okay, one pair of opposite angles that are congruent. They are these angles that are in between a short side and a long side. So look at the top of your picture. What is the name of the angle that is in between the short side and the long side? At the top of your kite, right there. What letter's at the top of the picture? Right. Okay, so B is in between a short side and a long side. So angle B is going to be congruent to which one is at the bottom in between the other short side and long side? D. Okay, so angle B and angle D are congruent in your picture. Angle B and angle D are congruent. And then the diagonals where they intersect are perpendicular. Okay, the diagonals are perpendicular. That means they form what kind of angles? Right angles. If you'll notice in the middle of your picture where the diagonals meet at E, they have a right angle marked there. Okay. So what is the name of the diagonal up and down in this picture? The full diagonal up and down. What's the name of that segment? Okay, AC, yeah, that one's one of them. It's going the other way though. Yeah. So AC, and then what's the other one? BD, yeah. And it doesn't matter the order in which you name them, just as long as you put both of them. So AC, the whole diagonal, is perpendicular to BD, the other diagonal. Quick question. How many sides does a quadrilateral have? 4. And we know that every quadrilateral has to have how many degrees in its angles? 360. So we kind of need to keep that in mind as we're going through and working this stuff out. Is everybody ready? Okay, let's take a look at number 1. I have my kite. It's even in the same direction as the original picture. It gives me the measure of angle A is 85. It gives me the measure of angle C is 43. And we just talked about one of the properties is that one pair of angles are congruent. Does it look like angle A and angle C are congruent? No. So which ones would have to be congruent? B and D. So here's what we need to do. In order to find those other angles, the very first thing we want to do is add up the two angles that were given. Add up 85 and 43. So we should be adding 85 and 43 together. And then once we add those together, the 85 and the 43, what should we do with that number? Not 130. Okay, I'm hearing 180 and I'm hearing 360. What kind of shape is it? How many sides does it have? It's a quadrilateral, has 4 sides, which means its total degrees would be not 180 but 360. So what we want to do is add the 85 and the 43. What'd you get for that? 128. And then we're going to subtract that from 360. What do you get there? 232. Okay. Does that mean both angles are 232 degrees, B and D? No. That means that B and D together are 232. So what would I do to find out what one of them is? Divide it by 2. Yep. We're going to take that 232 and divide it by 2. 116? Okay. So that means both angle B and angle D are 116. Okay, those were the congruent angles. So I added the 2 angles that they gave me, subtracted it from the total degrees in the quadrilateral, which is 360. And then because I had 2 angles that needed to add up to be 232, I cut it in half to get each one. Does that make a little bit of sense? All right, let's look at 2. Push it down just a little bit and let it go. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Myron, let it go. It does it itself. You push it in and it kicks it back out when it's done.
How much that was?
$30.
Okay.
All right, looking at my picture, my kite has turned a little bit, correct? So what we have to do is pay attention to which angles are supposed to be congruent here. J and L, yes. Okay, so if L is 82, what would J have to be? 82. And then how do you think we could find the other one? Exactly. I have 3 out of my 4 angles. I know all 4 have to add up to be 360. So what you want to do is take 82 plus 82 plus 71 and then subtract that number from 360, and that's what your answer should be. So in your calculator, 82 plus 71, and then subtract that from 360. Yep. I got 235, is that what y'all got? Okay, and then we subtract that from 360, and that gives me 125. Okay, so you have to pay attention to which angles you're given, which ones are supposed to be congruent, and then remember that each quadrilateral has 360 degrees in it. Is everybody kind of okay there? Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. Is everybody ready? Now this picture is still dealing with angles, but what is drawn inside of this kite? What are the dotted lines called? They're perpendicular, but they're called what? It starts with a D. Diagonals, okay. So we are going to take a look. We know that they're perpendicular, so we know that this angle in here is 90 degrees, yes? All right, so what I want you to imagine, I'm going to highlight a section of this kite. Imagine just this top piece right here. Are those PQ and QR, do you think those are the same? Or are those the 2 consecutive sides that are supposed to be the same? Yeah, okay. So if this side and that side are congruent, what kind of triangle did I just make? It starts with an I. Isosceles. And if we have two sides that are congruent, what do we know about the two angles that are next to those sides? They are also congruent. So if that top angle is 37, guess what the top angle here is at R? 37, yep. Okay. Let me erase some of my highlights. Let's take a look at what they're asking and see if we need to get some more information, or are we done? Okay, PTQ, angle PTQ. Remember, follow it. PTQ. The middle one is where your angle is. How many degrees is that? 90. Everybody okay with that part? Then I'm going to look at angle PTQ. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. PQT. Do we know what that angle is? Can we figure it out? Okay. Because this little bitty shape right here is a triangle, and we know two of the three angles. So let's figure it out. Let's add 37 and what else? 90. So add 37 and 90. And we subtract that from how many degrees in a triangle? 180. And so we subtract that and we get how much, you said? 53. Okay. And then QRT. Let's look at that one. Nope. Highlighting QRT. Do we already know what that one is? Do we have it filled in? How much is it? 37. Okay. So technically, if you take that one diagonal, the PR, that basically cuts your height into two isosceles trapezoids, which will help you with your angle sometimes. I'm just looking at which ones they want us to find, sorry. Okay, let's look at our picture. Let's start. What is it at H? What angle is at H on all four of them? 90, okay. So if that top or the bottom angle there at D is 59, can I figure out what the angle, this angle is where I just put a question mark? Okay, just like we did the last one, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Add your 59 and your 90. We're finding out what that angle is on the left of the diagonal at G. And we're going to subtract that from 180. How much does that give me? 31. Okay. So this little angle here is 31. What does that mean? The angle is up top right next to E, but on the left side. 31. So what do you think this angle should be? 59, right? Because you see it makes these two small triangles are congruent as well. So if the other one is 59, so is that one. Whoops. And let's see if we've got what we need now. Let's look at angle GDE. GDE, that's that big one. How can I find out how many degrees that is? Which two? What numbers? Not 31. So if I want to find this whole angle that I just highlighted, this little angle right here is 59, and that little angle is also 59. So just add those two together. Yeah, we're going to add 59 plus 59. Somebody tell me what that is. Okay, so that's going to be that. Whoops. That's going to be that angle. Maybe. All right, let's see. What's the next one? DEH. Did we figure out what DEH was? How many? 31. Okay. And then the next one we want is DGH. Do we already have that one too? What is it? 31. Okay. So technically your diagonals, they cut the kite into two isosceles triangles, but then two congruent triangles and two congruent triangles, depending on which way your kite's turned. Anybody have any questions so far? All right, let's take a look at 5. Ooh, we got to do some work here. As best you can. Okay. All right. It tells me RS is 10, but that's already labeled in your picture, isn't it? Okay. And then it tells me RU is 9, but also that is labeled in my picture. It wants me to find QS. Okay, QS is this whole diagonal. Do you notice where I have the X marked? Okay, that's not the whole diagonal though, is it? The X is just half of it? Okay. Yeah. What do we know the diagonals are where they meet? They form what kind of angles? Right angles. So let's cut off part of our picture, all the parts that are labeled. That's 90. We called that X. We called that 10. We called that 9. What is it that I have to do to be able to solve for X here? It starts with a P. Pythagorean theorem. Go ahead and start working it out. Remember, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, figure out which one is your C. Everybody needs to be working on this problem. Are you doing that right now? Cool. Which one is C? Which one's across from my right angle? 10. So when we set it up, 10 is going to be in the place of C squared. Okay, so we're going to go 10 squared. The other two, the order doesn't matter. I put my X squared first because I like my variables written first. It really doesn't matter though. What is 9 squared? Okay, what is 10 squared? 100. We're going to subtract 81 over. What does that give me, 19? Okay. And then we need to take the square root, and I want you to round it to 1 decimal place. In your calculator, the square root of 19, remember it's second x squared, enter your 19 and hit equals. Okay, hit your blue button, your x squared button, enter 19 and equal 4 point what? 4.4? Does that sound about right, everybody? So if x, the half, is 4.4, what would I have to do to figure out what the whole thing is? Times it by 2. So 4.4 times 2 gives me a total of 8.8. Everybody okay with that? All right. It says GF is 15, which is labeled in your picture already. It says CG is 23, which is also already labeled in your picture. It wants me to find CD. Which one is labeled as X, though, in my picture? CF. What can you tell me about CD and CF, though? They're congruent. So whatever CF is, CD is going to be the same. Set it up. It's another Pythagorean theorem. You've got your right triangle right here in your picture. I'm going to let you do the work. Just remember, your right angle is where your diagonals meet. Figure out A, B, and C. If it happens to not be a whole number, just round it to 1 decimal place. Figure out which one is C. The other two, you just add and square. Set it equal to your C squared. Looking at your picture, find your right angle. It's right there highlighted. If you want to draw it off to the side, you're welcome to do that. Which one looks like it's C, I'm sorry. It's A squared plus B squared equals C. Which one in my triangle that I have highlighted is my hypotenuse? 23, 15, or X? X. So when you set it up, it should be 15 squared plus 23 squared equals X squared. So again, it should be, you can either do 15 squared plus 23 squared, or you can do 23 squared plus 15 squared, either way. What is 15 squared? 225? What about 23? I don't know that off the top of my head. What's 23 times 23? You guys all have calculators. Somebody tell me what 23 times 23 is. How much? Thank you. And then I'm going to add those together. 225 plus 529 is... Okay. And then I'm going to need you to take the square root of that in your calculator. I don't think that's a perfect square, so round it to 1 decimal place. Come on. Second, x squared, 754. Tell me what it is to 1 decimal place. Blue button, x squared button, 754 equals 0.5, you said? Okay. Is everybody okay with 27.5? Is that what we got? Okay. And that answers the question. That's all I needed to do. I don't need to plug it in and find anything else out. Anybody have any questions?